get your reaction on something topical, something that happened the other day, breaking news. We have amateur porn being created in the Senate hearing room. That's after topless trans on the White House lawn, cocaine being found in the building. So what's your reaction to just scandal after scandal, just the debauchery of what's going on Capitol Hill and in the White House?
On one hand, I'm like, is this really surprising? But on the other hand, I'm realizing it is surprising for the public, right? When you've been in politics for 10 plus years, as I have been, and many of the people here, you know, the people who have been in these circles know that this is what's going on behind closed doors with our political class. It's just utter debauchery, right? And I really don't think you can get to the highest levels of these institutions without kind of learning to bend morality, right? And so you look at the absolute highest institutions in your country, and you're going to have the people that are bending morality to the highest degrees. And in a way, I think this is a good thing that it's come out, as much as it is a shame for the country and the image and respect. These institutions don't deserve respect anymore because this is what is actually going on. So it's kind of a unveiling, you know, the truth will always come out, shine light on it. I think even you saw Madison Cawthorn come out and say, I told you guys, this is all like gangbangs and cocaine behind the scenes in all of our government institutions. And it really is like these shows you watch, House of Cards, it is like that. These aren't just fantasies. This isn't just an exciting story. That's what's going on. And you think this is something that came to light, oh, that's all that's happening, that's shocking. No, this is, everything else is being covered up successfully, right? This is just one thing that happened to come to light. Imagine what's actually being covered up and very well. People hire whole PR firms, they hire private investigators, you know, everyone to work around covering these stories up, and most of them don't ever make it to the press.
Do you think there's any way to kind of to break that stuff down, or is that just going to be the perpetual, the way of things in government?
Have you ever heard the term pathocracy?
Explain.
So it's a form of government in which the majority of the populace are ruled by a pathological minority. So most people don't have, like, aren't psychopaths, right? There's about, I think it's debated between 1 to 2% of the population are like actual full-blown psychopaths. Don't feel empathy and in fact take pleasure in when they've fooled you. And of course, these people are going to be very successful in a world where manipulation is key, and that is politics. So, you know, you look at institutions like lawyers or politicians, you're going to have a much higher degree of psychopaths. A pathocracy is when almost the entirety of your government becomes this 1% of the population that are truly psychopaths, because they are able to survive within that environment where you have to eternally be backstabbing people, lying to the public, having a mask on. And of course, I think that the kind of pathological minority that do control our countries, the one thing that they get joy from is fooling the public. So doing something like having sex in the Senate, that's going to be one of the few things they can garner pleasure from. You're not going to be garnering pleasure from a wholesome relationship where you're, you know, actually building something meaningful, because I think a lot of people have lost the capacity. One thing that I think is also pointing towards this pathocracy notion is just how old the government in America is becoming. We are having the oldest presidents. I mean, I'm Canadian, but just observing over here, you have some of the oldest presidents in history, some of the oldest Senate members, Congress members. The average age has gone up immensely. Now, what kind of person doesn't want to take a step away from the spotlight, doesn't want to step away from work? We're talking people that aren't putting their family first. I'm not saying, you know, family people don't work, but usually they want to retire. They want to be with their grandchildren. They want to be spending most of their time, like, in the vita contemplativa, the contemplative life, not the vita activa, where you're constantly having to distract yourself. The only reason you would need to stay in a job that is so corrupt and gross and broken when you're that old is if you have corrupted your mind to such a degree that you can no longer stay still. You have to work until the very end. And you saw this with Dianne Feinstein. It's like, give it up. let the younger generation take over. It's time for you to go, but they're clinging to this power, and that is not a good sign. I'm not saying there aren't elderly people who don't do amazing things in government and stay there because they're trying to protect some institutions, but the majority of it I see, it's people that have become so immersed with power and corruption that it's like a little, almost cutting it from themselves to be cutting their soul. They have become these caricatures that they play publicly so fully, and it really is, in my opinion, it comes down to a spiritual battle finally bringing its face forward in the form of these media stories of, oh, you know, they're doing sex tapes in the Senate, they're finding cocaine here, you know, the Hunter Biden stuff. These are deeply lost and broken people, deeply lost and broken. And the one thing that they've been able to succeed at is deceiving the populace. That's the one thing they're very good at, and they won't give it up no matter what, because otherwise they're just left with the torment of their own minds.
Yeah, well, that's a very good observation.
In my opinion, anyway.
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah, with Dianne Feinstein, you know, just clinging to her position until the end.
It doesn't make sense. If I had the amount of money that many of these people had, I would probably be stepping away in 2 years. You know, I'd still do my little work here and there, maybe write a book, do a movie, but people who don't have to cling to power to that degree and don't really seem, it's different when you can see they've got a mission, right? Yeah. I am trying to change something fundamentally in this country or protect something fundamentally in this country that I believe is being lost. But when you see these politicians that are just flip-flopping on everything, they're clearly just following whatever some of these people are having their, you know, got aides whisper in their ears how they're supposed to vote because they can barely even function anymore. They're not staying there to try to achieve anything meaningful. They're staying there because they don't know anything other than the life of power and manipulation anymore.
Well, segueing to Canada, could you tell us what's been going on in your country?
I mean, Canada. I love my country because I think it's the most beautiful place in the world, and we've got some incredible people, but of course we are highly politically corrupt. We are almost a satellite state of China at this point with all the control they have over our elections. If people can look into it, we've recently had very large exposés from our media on Chinese influence campaigns, particularly targeting our Liberal Party, Trudeau's government. We're talking honeypots deployed. We're talking, you know, basically sleeper cell influence campaigns amongst Chinese students in our country, money being given to Liberal candidates. It was a full-on government operation going on here. So, and it makes sense because one of the biggest unspoken issues in Canada is how we are one of the money laundering capitals in the world. They call it snow washing. And yeah, you know, a lot of it is done through our property, businesses, all these things. In China, but a lot of people that are trying to get their money out of China, Chinese Communist Party members, people that are just trying to get out, they're pumping it all into Canadian real estate. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest issues in the next 5 years, and it's going to affect things globally as well, is the Canadian housing market. People cannot survive in our country right now. I know people that are educated individuals. We're talking they've got their master's degrees, they're having to live in their parents' basements, living in trailers because we simply do not have the housing. So much of it has been bought by foreign investors, particularly Chinese. We've got immigration rates that are some of the highest per capita in the world, 500,000 people per year, not even including the students that are coming in from India on student visas and or illegal people coming in. And we only build 200,000 houses per year, and we're already maxed. We already have a housing crisis where we do not have free houses for people to live in, to rent. Our rent prices are doubled in cities like Vancouver and Toronto. People cannot keep up, and this is going to come to a head at some point. But if our housing market collapses, the whole Ponzi scheme collapses. Our entire economy is based on this inflated housing market, so the Trudeau government and all of our politicians just keep kicking the buck. They're like, we got to keep the immigration coming to keep these prices inflated, otherwise, you know, the emperor has no clothes. The economy will be shown to be this Ponzi scheme. So that's the joy I'm living in Canada right now.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's kind of similar. I feel like something similar is going on in the States. You said people, like foreign investors, are trying to buy up a lot of property in Canada. So I feel like they're trying to do that in the States as well. I mean, I know some people that have like they own a lot of property, and even me for my house, just everyone that I know is getting these phone calls from foreigners like, can I buy your house? Just constantly.
And it makes no sense why we don't have laws against this. So you look at it, it's fundamental. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, shelter. Like, people need shelter. They need that kind of security. Why it wouldn't be our first and foremost goal as a country to ensure that housing is for Canadians, or if you're American, housing is for Americans. If you have a single Canadian or a single American that is working, doing their best, not on drugs, that simply cannot find a place they can afford to rent or live in your city, not a single one of those properties should be going to overseas investors. Not a single one of those properties should be going to corporations as well. This is residential property for regular people to live in. The whole thing is quite disgusting, but you look at the corruption in our government and the amount of links, also the amount of investment profiles that politicians in power have in some of these, real estate operations. It's not beneficial for the economy to crash the housing market, the bubble to crash, so that regular people can get a chance to get a foot in. And this is also linked to the eat the bugs kind of future we're looking at, where you will live in the pod, you will eat the bugs, you will rent forever. You will own nothing. They don't want people to have their own property, because there's a lot of power in having your own property and having that stability. If you are eternally in debt to a government, if you are eternally in debt to the banks, you have to go to work, you have to behave. You can't stand up and oppose vaccine mandates or whatever policy it is, because you literally will become homeless. If people are able to live outside of a debt economy, which Canada is a debt economy right now, everyone is in debt, whether it's for their car, their house, whatever. If you are able to escape that and actually be able to afford homes and properties that aren't being inflated by corporations, foreign investors, government trickery, the people have a lot more power. And I always thought about this during COVID. If it were 30 years ago or something, where we used to have this saying where it's like you keep at least 2, maybe even 6 paychecks in your bank as backup, just in case, 6 months of pay, so in case a disaster happens. If everyone in the country, I truly believe this, if everyone in the country had 6 months of pay in their bank account, didn't have debt to deal with, and were ready to be fired because they were going to be okay for a little bit, I don't think the lockdowns ever would have happened, because people's main pressure point is being able to support their family. So they don't want people owning property. They don't. They want us renting forever, and it is very convenient for them to inflate these prices, bring in mass immigration, lower the bar overall of wages, because it suppresses wages as well when we bring in mass immigration. People don't have the bargaining ability with corporations anymore, because Pajit from overseas will do it for half the price. It's all very orchestrated, and it doesn't even have to be nefarious. It's simply beneficial to governments and corporations to do so.
With everything that's been going on, debauchery, rhinos, Democrats going insane, the left having control over everything from academia to entertainment, you name it. What would be your advice to a conservative that wants to stay motivated and involved in the political arena when so much is going on like this and the odds seem stacked against them?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't consider myself a conservative, because I'm a little worried about, being held to all these labels. I'm an imperfect human, so I'm just a bit of a dissident. But just as someone who is against the grain in this arena, it can be very difficult. If you're doing good work, you're going to face opposition, both from governments. I've lived it firsthand. This is only the second time I've traveled to the States in 7 years that I haven't been pulled in for questioning, so that's been a big deal, and it's very demotivating, very stressful. You don't know when your life's going to be destroyed in a moment. And also, there's just the, meeting your heroes and realizing the political realm is a lot more corrupt than you'd ever expect it to be from the outside. Certainly not what anyone portrays. And I think, I have a wonderful professor, Ron Dart, back in Canada, and he wrote a book from When Mountain Meets Valley, I think that's what it's called. But he talks about how in life, you always have to be going from the mountain to the valley. So you have to be in the arena where things are happening, where the fight is going on, have your battle axe out. But then you have to take time to walk up to the mountain, relax, observe it from the top, and really take a break away from it, so you can ensure you haven't gotten caught up in the debauchery, the chaos, the corruption, you have to be able to step away because it is so easy to lose yourself in anything in life. I mean, I think politics is particularly tempting. Every single great book warning people through fiction of the crises they may face in their life, you know, Lord of the Rings, all these things, it's all about how humans are so easily corrupted by power, and that is a simple but fundamental truth. And so I think the most important thing you can do when entering this world is enter it with wonderful intentions, as everyone does, I truly believe, and step away to ensure you haven't lost them. Step away, look at what you're doing, observe it, pray about it if you're Christian, really take time to not get caught up in it. Yeah, and this is what I was talking about earlier when I talked about these politicians that get to quite late in life, we're talking their 90s, and they won't even retire because they have lost themselves so much to this world. I believe that's where the corruption comes in. We would be better off if we chose, you know, the random people from a phone book to be in government and do it for a year and then leave than I think we would be with these dinosaurs that have become addicted to power. And it can happen to any of us in such a short time. So I've taken my breaks here and there, step away. Yeah, it's not great for your career in this fast pace. You gotta have 10 videos out a day or you're gonna lose followers, the world, but it's good for your heart and soul and good for actually contributing to this. And you won't, I don't think you'll lose motivation if you know you're actually bringing something real to this world.
What's your next project?
I just came out with a movie called Infringed on the Second Amendment in America, obviously. Funny, it was 2 Canadians that came down and did the film, but probably because we know it firsthand. We just had handguns banned by Justin Trudeau, so I own a couple. I don't know if I should say that out loud these days, but if you already have them, you can have them grandfathered in. So essentially you get to hold on to them in Canada, but you can't transfer them, you can't buy new ones, you can't sell them. And when you die, the government comes and takes them away. So I will be the last generation of Canadian handgun owners. And every year they're putting in new policies banning more. So looking at what's happening in my country and the overreach of power, people's bank accounts being shut down during COVID, I think the Second Amendment is very important to opposing that kind of power, to keep tyrannical governments in check, to keep yourself safe, even just from bears. Doesn't have to be criminals or anything. So I did this film, went down to the States, covered what's going on here with Biden, politicians, cities with gun-free zones. We went to Baltimore and all over the place. Great film. You can watch it on timcast.com if people are interested. And I guess it's more of a warning, like, don't become like us guys, please, please. I need somewhere to escape to, all right?
Yeah.
But I just started last month with a new media company called Tenet Media. We're on YouTube. It's just kind of videos and stuff. So if people want to check out Tenet Media, it's spelt like the movie, so the movie will probably come up first. But yeah, you can find my new content there.